Let's start with a really provocative question, one you've probably heard before, made famous by the late Sir Ken Robinson. Do schools actually kill creativity? It's a huge idea, and today we're going to unpack his entire argument. Okay, so this is the real puzzle at the heart of everything. Think about it. Our education systems are, for the most part, super structured, linear, and built for certainty, but they're supposed to be preparing kids for a future that is anything but certain. I mean, it's completely unpredictable. How on earth do you make those two things work together? Just try to wrap your head around this for a second. A child starting school right now will likely be retiring sometime around 2065. We don't even know what our world will look like next year, let alone 50 years from now. So this isn't just some abstract philosophical problem. It is maybe the central challenge of our time. We're educating a whole generation for a future that we literally cannot even begin to imagine. And all of this leads to what Sir Ken Robinson calls the creativity crisis. His whole argument is that kids are born with these incredible, diverse talents, but our school systems are almost perfectly designed to just, to squander them, to just let them wither away. And here is his big, bold claim. He says, loud and clear, that creativity isn't some fluffy, nice-to-have skill for Friday afternoons. Nope. He argues it's a fundamental tool for survival in that unpredictable future. It is just as important as reading and writing, and we need to start treating it that way. Now, this is where his argument gets really interesting and kind of turns our usual thinking on its head. Most of us assume that creativity is something you have to learn, right? Something you gain as you get older. But Robinson says that's completely backward. The real issue, he says, is the system itself. He believes we are all born with these massive creative capacities, but that the process of formal education systematically teaches us not to use them. So we don't grow into creativity. We are literally educated out of it. And why does this happen? Well, he points to one huge reason. Little kids are not afraid of being wrong. They'll just take a stab at anything. He tells this brilliant little story about a 6-year-old girl who's in her art class, just drawing away. So her teacher walks over and asks, "What are you drawing?" And the girl says, "I'm drawing a picture of God." The teacher, a bit confused, says, "But nobody knows what God looks like." And the little girl, without even looking up, just replies, "They will in a minute." I mean, come on, that's just perfect, right? That's creativity in its purest form, totally fearless and willing to just go for it. So the big question is, if kids start out with that kind of confidence, how do we manage to beat it out of them? Well, Robinson points to a couple of key things our education systems do, almost universally, that pretty much stamp out originality. The number one culprit? Our obsession with finding the one right answer. From day one in school, it's drilled into us that mistakes are the absolute worst thing you can make. You know the drill. Red marks all over your paper, bad grades. The whole system is built around mistake avoidance. And that fear of failure is absolutely crippling for creativity. Because as Robinson says, if you're not prepared to be wrong, you'll never, ever come up with anything original. By punishing every little mistake, we're basically teaching kids to stop taking the risks that are essential for any new idea. We teach them to be afraid to even try. And then there's the second big problem, this unspoken but very real hierarchy of subjects. And what's wild is that it's pretty much the same no matter where you go on the planet. There's this global agreement on what subjects are important and which ones aren't. And I bet you can guess what it looks like. Right at the very top, you've got math and languages, the useful subjects for getting a job. Then a little lower down, you find the humanities. And way, way at the bottom, the arts. And at the very bottom of the arts, you'll usually find drama and dance, treated like they're just fun little hobbies. So what's the end result of all this? Robinson has this unforgettable way of putting it. He says, we end up educating people from the waist up, and then we focus on one side of their heads. By pushing the arts to the bottom, we're basically telling kids that their bodies, their movements, their creative impulses, they just don't matter as much as their academic analytical skills. We're educating them like they're just heads to be filled with information. Okay, so we've laid out the problem. If the current system is broken, what's the fix? Well, according to Robinson, it all starts with completely rethinking what we even mean by intelligence. Because true intelligence, he says, is so much more than just what you score on a test. He boils it down to these 3 big ideas. First, intelligence is diverse. We don't just think in words and numbers. We think in pictures. We think in sounds. We think in movement. Second, it's dynamic. Your brain isn't a bunch of separate boxes from math and history. It's all interconnected. And finally, and this is so important, it's distinct. Your intelligence is as unique to you as your fingerprint. And honestly, there's no better way to understand what he means than with the true story of a little girl named Gillian Lynn. Back in the 1930s, Gillian was, by every school standard, a problem child. You can just picture the report cards, right? The school was convinced she had some kind of learning disorder. She couldn't concentrate, she was always fidgeting, she was disturbing the other kids, her homework was always late. Today, she'd probably be diagnosed with ADHD in a heartbeat. So her mother, worried, takes her to a specialist. The doctor talks to Gillian for a while, and then he asks her mother to speak with him outside. On his way out, he quietly turns on the radio on his desk. And as soon as they left the room, they looked back through the window, and little Gillian was on her feet, moving beautifully to the music. The doctor turned to her mother and said something that would change her life forever. "Mrs. Lynn, Gillian isn't sick. She's a dancer." She didn't have a problem. She was just a different kind of smart. She needed to move to think. So, her mom took her to a dance school. And Gillian said for the first time in her life, she walked into a room full of people like her. People who had to move to think. And that little girl, that problem child, grew up to become Dame Gillian Lynn, one of the greatest choreographers of our time, responsible for some of the most successful musicals in history, like Cats and The Phantom of the Opera. I mean, what a story, right? It just shows you what's possible when we get out of the way and let different kinds of intelligence shine. And that brings us to the final and most hopeful part of this whole idea, a new way forward. Robinson contrasts two ways of thinking. On the one hand, we have the old industrial model. It treats education like an assembly line, a mechanical process designed to strip mine minds for one single resource, academic ability. But he proposes a new, ecological model. Here, the goal isn't manufacturing a uniform product. It's more like being a farmer. Your job is to create the right conditions, and then a rich diversity of human talent will naturally begin to flourish. So, when you boil it all down, the big takeaway is this. If we want to prepare our kids for that crazy, unpredictable future, we have to stop narrowing our definition of success. Our only real hope is to embrace a much richer, broader view of human capacity and see our children for the incredible, diverse, and creative beings they are from day one. So we end up right back where we started with a challenge. Our real job isn't just to educate their minds, but to educate their whole being, their curiosity, their passion, their spirit. They are the ones who are going to have to navigate that future we can't even imagine. And the question Robinson leaves for all of us is, are we ready and are we brave enough to give them the education they truly need to do it?